Hello friends, in this video, I'll be answering some questions I've collected from my recent videos. If you want your question to be featured in the next video, make sure to leave it in the comments section. But before we begin, I would like to share my opinion about the Baki vs. Kengan movie. If you haven't seen it yet, I warn you that there will be spoilers ahead. I plan to make a video discussing the flaws of the movie, but for now, I'll share my first impressions. To start, I'll say that I don't think the movie is trash. However, I had to turn off my brain to enjoy it. The movie has several flaws, and if you're a very critical fan, you're definitely not going to like it. I recommend watching it for what it is, a movie that is not part of the main story. In other words, this is not canon. And while what many assume is true, Baki and the others were nerfed to level their power with the Kengan fighters. I'm not saying Oma or Rain are weak, but Baki and Jack in the Pickle arc were already far superior to the versions of Oma and Rain presented in the movie. I wouldn't object if they were their manga versions, where they have already shown to be very strong, but Netflix brought their weaker versions and pitted them against some of the strongest versions of Baki and Jack. It's like bringing Baki from the Maximum Tournament to face Baki from the Pickle arc. That was the biggest flaw, trying to match the power levels between the two series. I think it would have been better to use the versions of Jack and Baki from the Five Prisoners arc. But putting that aside, I think this movie was a strategy to promote Kengan using Baki's popularity on Netflix. It's clear that the platform will try to use the series' popularity to promote other projects. I'm not saying this is bad, it's just that it felt like a very commercial product made with little passion. I also didn't like the time spent on the fights. Everything was very fast and anticlimactic. I think 1 hour was too short for a project of this magnitude. 1 more hour would have helped to better develop the plot and give more dynamism to the fights. Of course, I didn't like Jack's defeat, but I'll discuss that in another video. I also didn't like the Baki vs. Oma fight for the simple reason that they didn't have enough time to give us a worthy battle to watch. Everything was very fast, and it was basically a spam of techniques by Baki. In fact, I found it funny. Baki used his entire arsenal against Oma and even used techniques from his friends, but still couldn't knock out his rival. You could say that Oma was harder to defeat than Pickle himself. In summary, the biggest enemy of this movie was Netflix for making a project of this caliber and only giving it 1 hour for 3 fights that promised a lot. What would be the ideal ending for the Baki series? During the last few months, I've been asking myself the question that all Baki fans have wondered at some point. How will the series end? Well, that is a question only the author of the series knows. But if you want to hear my opinion on how it should end, I'll share some thoughts I have about it. I think the end of Baki should feature a new tournament in the underground arena. I would like to see the best fighters in the series participate in the tournament and give us those dream fights we have always wanted to see. Obviously, the final fight should be Baki vs. Yujiro. That is the most anticipated rematch and would be the perfect moment for Baki to finally defeat his father. In fact, it wouldn't be necessary for Baki and Yujiro to be in the tournament. They could have their fight outside the tournament, in the streets of Tokyo, for example, something like when Goku and Vegeta started their fight in the martial arts tournament, but ended up fighting in another location. But going back to the tournament, it would be ideal for Jack Hanma to be crowned as the champion. Remember that in the last tournament, he came in second place after losing to his brother Baki. Clearly, I am proposing this scenario assuming that Jack and Yujiro have already faced each other before. The winner of that fight is up to you. Just imagine all the epic fights that could happen. Jack versus Hanayama, Jack versus Oliva, Pickle versus Hanayama, or we could even see Doppo versus Katsumi in a father-son fight. That would be epic. In short, I would like the last arc of the series to be a tournament where the best fighters participate and Jack Hanma wins that tournament. On the other hand, the final fight would be Baki versus Yujiro. It would be in that fight where Baki finally manages to defeat his father, giving the ogre his first defeat. Now tell me how you would like the series to end. Do you think it would be a good idea to bring back Musashi Miyamoto as the final boss? Or, on the other hand, would you like Yuichiro Hanma, Yujiro's father, to make his return to face the ogre? Or perhaps just to give Baki special training? There are many important characters in the series, and it is difficult to fit them all into a single arc and give them all relevance. That's why I think a tournament would be an appropriate way to give everyone a role. Is Yujiro getting soft? Is he no longer as ruthless as before? Rather than becoming soft, I would say that he has matured. He now has a different perspective on things, and this change came about because of his fight with Baki. But make no mistake, Yujiro is only like this with Jack and Baki. he hasn't shown his paternal side to anyone else. In reality, Yujiro is just as relentless as before. If you don't believe it, read chapter 100 of Bakudo. Mitsunari almost met the same fate as Joe William. But anyway, I don't think this change in Yujiro affects his character. In fact, it gives him greater depth and complexity. It's very interesting to see the ogre having conversations with his sons. In these interactions, we can notice the important evolution he has had compared to the Yujiro of the first chapters. So, as long as Itagaki doesn't make a drastic change to Yujiro's character, I'm okay with giving him more of these moments where he enjoys walking or eating with his sons. Did Yujiro's father survive an atomic bomb? No, Yujiro was never hit with a nuclear bomb. This is a mistake many people tend to believe. In reality, Yujiro was attacked with several tons of explosives, but never with an atomic or nuclear bomb. The possibility of using such a bomb was considered, but it was never approved, and Yujiro took advantage of this to subdue the entire enemy fleet. So no, Yujiro's father did not survive an atomic bomb because it was never launched. But in my personal opinion, both Yujiro and Yuichiro would have a good chance of surviving an attack of that magnitude. As long as they weren't at the center of the explosion, they could take shelter underground to avoid the blast wave. However, radiation is another matter. Yujiro said he is immune to many types of poison, but the power of an atomic or nuclear bomb is something difficult to calculate. Could Jack Hanma defeat Bane? Well, in these kinds of hypothetical matchups against DC Comics characters, there's always a problem. Each character has dozens of versions, each one stronger or weaker than the previous. So, to get an answer, we would have to choose one version among all of them. For example, if we take the Bane from the movies, Jack Hanma would undoubtedly crush him. That Bane is stronger than the average human, but not strong enough to face Jack in his current manga version. However, if we look at the comics, there are versions of Bane that are far superior to Jack, both physically and strategically. In one story, we can see a version of Bane who helped Superman defeat Doomsday. A single punch from Doomsday would be enough to knock Jack out, and here we see Bane fighting this monster. There is also another version of Bane who is very strong but also very intelligent. This character is known for being smart and strategic, but the New 52 version is definitely stronger and smarter than Jack Hanma. It is said that Bane can lift around 10 tons, which is already an exaggerated amount of weight even for characters like Oliva Biscuit, one of the strongest characters in the Baki series. But anyway, in short, Jack could defeat some versions of Bane, but he would have a hard time with the stronger versions. So if you want me to make a more detailed comparison, just let me know which version of Bane you would like me to include. John Wick versus Dominic Toretto, who would win? I prefer John Wick. Both characters have a lot of plot armor, but Dom seems to have God on his side to the point where I wouldn't be surprised to see him survive an atomic bomb in Fast and Furious. However, being realistic and taking both characters out of their universes, the winner would be John Wick. Although Dom has above-average strength and endurance, John Wick masters multiple martial arts and is an expert in the use of weapons. In a physical fight, Dom would have the advantage with his brute strength, but this wouldn't be enough. A featherweight UFC fighter can knock out a professional wrestler who is 1.90 meters tall and weighs 300 pounds. In a real fight, technique and body usage are more important than size and weight. In a realistic scenario, without divine intervention, John Wick would defeat Dom in both armed combat and a physical fight. John Wick is a mercenary with decades of training. He knows all the weak points of the human body. The fight wouldn't need to be long to determine the winner. With weapons, John Wick would still be the victor, as he can turn any object, even his shoelaces, into a deadly weapon. My opinion on the Jujutsu Kaisen manga. I don't know how many people who watch my videos read the Jujutsu Kaisen manga, but I have to say that I'm up to date with the current events in the story, and it is absolutely crazy what's happening. If you're not caught up, I warn you that there will be spoilers in the next few seconds. I really didn't like the idea of Yuta using Gojo's body to fight Sukuna. However, it would have been worse to revive Gojo at this point. I mean, I didn't like what they did, but looking at it, it could have been worse. I think this fight against the King of Curses has been dragged out too long, and I honestly doubt he will be the final enemy. Kenjaku dreamed of creating a creature using assimilation, so I believe that whatever results from the assimilation will be the final enemy. It's not what I want to happen, but there's a high chance it will, This brings back bad memories of the ninja war in Naruto, so I just hope this series has a worthy ending. Without a doubt, it's one of my favorite mangas and deserves a good conclusion. My opinion on Jack and Yujiro's dinner: I really enjoyed this father-son confrontation, but if we add the moment where Jack and Yujiro went for a walk together, it definitely becomes something epic and narratively significant. Some people didn't like it simply because there wasn't a real fight, but come on, it was obvious that wasn't going to happen yet. This new arc is only 20 chapters in. It was clear we weren't going to see one of the most anticipated fights so soon. What I liked most about these interactions between Jack and Yujiro was the way Jack managed to piss off the ogre. Jack didn't say aggressive words to Yujiro. They were words with some sarcasm, but a lot of truth, and that was enough to test his patience. If we remember Yujiro and Baki's dinner, it was Baki who started to irritate his father with uncomfortable questions and aggressive actions. Like when he grabbed him by the neck. That was a reason to make Yujiro angry. With Jack, it was different because the ogre couldn't stand his son's passive-aggressive manner of speaking anymore, and that's why he called him to stand up and start the fight. I don't consider that Jack was humiliated after receiving that blow from Yujiro. In fact, the ogre mentioned that he wanted to throw him from that height because he knew nothing would happen to him. With those words, he was indirectly saying that Jack was tougher than the ground itself. For now, we just have to wait and see what happens in the next chapters. I hope we see more interactions between Jack and Yujiro, but I'd also like to see the biting cyborg interacting with his brother Baki. Well, that's all for now. Remember that if you want to participate in the next questions and answers video, don't hesitate to leave your questions in the comments section. You can also ask about other series or popular topics that are not related to the Baki series. And well, friends, thanks for watching the video. Don't forget to subscribe if you liked it. I hope you have a nice day or night. See you soon.